Hello everybody, my name is SockBot, and I'm here with another tips video for Little Big Planet 3's Create Mode. So if you didn't see my last video, which was the wrap-up to my Grab-A-Color 2 build, you can go ahead and watch that if you like. It'd be useful, because this is kind of based upon that video. It's the tips and tricks that I learned while building my last build, or rather, learned, remembered, whatever you want to call it. So, let's get started. My first tip here is don't be afraid to remove or change something that isn't working. Now, don't be afraid. You don't always have to kick something out that you spent so much time in, but sometimes when you make a challenge, and maybe it was easy, maybe it was hard, but it's just not working the way you want it to, or you play through it and it's just not fun. Now, it's hard, but you gotta remember at this point that the player playing your level is probably not gonna think it's as fun or as easy as you do. So if you think it's not very fun or not very easy, you gotta take that into account. But don't worry, there's easy ways to solve this. So I'm going to show two examples of this from this last video. Right here, this part I test played and it was just way too difficult. I died way too many times, so the easy thing to do was to just make it a bit easier. Because if I'm dying 100 times, I know somebody playing it's going to die 200 times. So what I did is I just widened the top and bottom a little bit so that the player had a little bit more time to manipulate the character in midair so that they could get to the teleport at the bottom. So this other part was a little bit different, so I had no problem playing through this. I got through it in maybe 2 deaths. But what I realized is the only reason I did that is because I made the video, so I know the easiest way through this room. But then again, I didn't want people to just get through it in 2 seconds and be past it and not remember it at all. And also, I didn't want it to be easy. So what I did was I added a little counter here so that if the player dies 5 times during this challenge and they return to the checkpoint 5 times, then this little counter activates and it turns on these arrows which show the easiest path through this room. This is a great way to keep it kind of easy for those people that are spending too long on the same challenge, but also leave the challenge there for people that manage to get through it pretty quickly. Now, kind of like a sub-form to this, a lot of the times you're going to be making a challenge, and in my example here, it's these exploding panels, and when you make it halfway through the challenge, but you die, you have to go back to the beginning of the challenge, and then the challenge is made impossible, because in this case it's the destroyers. So to solve this, I actually just added an emitter which emits that entire section of the level every time the player respawns. That way, the player gets a few chances to get through it and doesn't get stuck at the beginning of the level with a few lives left. I actually use infinite life points, so the emitters are set to emit as many times as the player returns, but of course, you can change that to your personal preference. Now the next tip, and this is more for people that are relatively new to playing Little Big Planet, or rather creating in Little Big Planet. Maybe you started in Little Big Planet 2 or Little Big Planet 3, but a lot of the people remember from Little Big Planet 1 that sometimes you're going to create something in create mode and it just doesn't seem to be working the way it should. Now don't worry, a lot of the time this isn't your fault. A lot of the time something is just glitching, or maybe a piece is supposed to fit into another piece with a piston or a mover or something and it just doesn't. So sometimes this can be due to friction, or sometimes it can be due to the size of the shape, maybe you just resize them wrong, but most of the time it's probably just a glitch. The good news here is that Little Big Planet gives so many different ways to complete the same challenge, so many different ways to make the same challenge, that you can just recreate it a different way. Maybe if a mover isn't working, you can use a piston or a winch, or you can just create an emitter. I ran into this a lot with the layer movers that were introduced in Little Big Planet 2. I don't actually use these at all because they're so darn glitchy. Something wants to move forward, it has to be moving forward into a space that's very, very large, and that it's not going to hit anything, or even be close to hitting anything, because if it does, it just won't work. So in this case, I actually use a lot of destroyers and emitters to just remake that kind of thing in a layer forward, and, you know, it's worked out well for me, but maybe it doesn't work for you. And, you know, that's why there's 10 different ways to use it. But anyways, those are just my 2 main tips for this video, and I hope you liked it. If you did, leave me a like down there, maybe hit subscribe if you're new or whatever. And thank you so much for watching, and I will be back very soon. I think the next video that's going to be out is another build video, so if you do like those time lapses like I do, go right ahead, and I'll hopefully leave a link to that and my previous video in the description. And thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye!